is up, y'all? It is me, Tasha C, and welcome to the Tasha C Show podcast. Shout out to my YouTube podcast fam who is supporting me, health and love, shield or protection to stay safe, and also even to the people who will be supporting me on both I strongly recommend or both platforms. If you want to know my YouTube channel is Tasha C TV, put that in and let me go over there. I'm not gonna make the intro long like this, but like I said, hugs and love support for people in the future who will be supporting me. Okay, we have another episode of our Kings and Queens volume. I think it should be 64, 65. Today is April the 4th, 2020. Since my sleep pattern, it's been a little bit off. And, considering, during these times, I figured let me go ahead again and do like I used to do. And if I'm up a certain amount of time and have nothing else to do, I'll just go ahead and do my podcast, even though it's already the next day. You know what I mean? Like later on the next day. So anyway, we're going to start off with the bittersweet news. I may just read 2 articles today. But just to let you know before I begin, besides like a couple more of the lives, like I said, there's Babyface versus Telly Wiley, I think at 6 p.m. on Instagram. And another, today, later on today, hopefully I upload this earlier in advance. Now, DJ D Nice, which I already mentioned before again, I seen that he's having another Cub quarantine that's starting at 4 p.m. Pacific time and 7 p.m. Eastern time. So somebody actually went his record of the rapper / singer Tory Lanez. He had 300,000, so he went past that. Something I think it was versus him and French Montana or something like that. But yeah, if y'all feel like time to listen to some more good music, Cub Quarantine from D Nice, Instagram handle. We're just talking about the times there. Now, sadly, as usual times as life goes on, the people who have transition and carryover. If y'all heard recently, you have people like from Kenny Rogers or something and so forth. Also recently, I'm going to talk about today. This is a legend that we have all heard of. He's now carryover, got rest his soul. But this is article from BBC News, bb.com. Lean on Me singer Bill Withers dies at 81. This is the article was published on April 3rd, 2020. It just says user Canada, doesn't say yet who, who actually wrote the article. Bill Withers, the acclaimed 1970s soul singer behind the hits Ain't No Sunshine and Lean on Me, has died from heart complications, age 81, his family said. The singer died Monday in Los Angeles, the family told the Associated Press. They described him in a statement as a solitary man with a heart driven to connect to the world. He spoke honestly to people and connected them to each other, the statement says. Known for smooth baritone vocals and sumptuous soul arrangements, he wrote some of the 70s best remembered songs, including Just the Two of Us, Lovely Day, and Use Me. And this man was no joke. Okay. On Lovely Day, he set the record for the longest sustained note on a U.S. hit chart, holding a high E for 18 seconds. Yeah, that is no joke. Although he stopped recording in 1985, his songs remained major influence in R&B and hip-hop. I believe that. His track Grandma's Hands was sampled on Backstreet's No Diggity, and Eminem's reinterpreted Just the Two of Us on his hit 1997 Bonnie and Clyde. I never had knew that. Okay, but Lean on Me has recently become associated with the Miss Queen Rona pandemic that I gotta change the words because I'm uploading this YouTube, with many people posting their own versions to support health workers. That's what they said on the news here. That they were talking about, the passing him when I was watching this. I don't honestly know if it was like Access Hollywood or my local news station. But they were saying that this song has been used during this time of us, going through some things with this mean heifer, Queen R, or Queen B, or Queen Quay, whatever you prefer. We are devastated by the loss of our beloved, devoted husband and father, said the Withers family in a statement. With his poetry and music, he spoke honestly to the people and connected them to each other. As a private life, he lived close to intimate family and friends. His music forever belongs to the world. In this difficult time, we pray his music offers comfort and entertainment as fans hold tight to loved ones. U.S. musician Chance the Rapper led tributes describing the singer as the greatest and recalling some of his own personal memories. Okay. Actually, they just removed Lenny Kravitz's statement, so I might just skip Chance the Rapper on there. Rock star and actor Lenny Kravitz posted his voice, songs, and total expression gave us hope and strength. It said Charlie's Twitter post is currently unavailable. Beach Boy Master My Barbers said he was very sad to hear about Bill Withers' passing, calling him a songwriter, while John Legend added that the life wouldn't be the same without him and his music. And BBC Radio's 2, Trevor Nelson wrote, "The star's music was a remedy for the non-sensational times. He was a genius singer-songwriter. Can't listen to Bill without feeling emotional." Born in 1938, Withers was the youngest of 6 children. His father died when he was a child, and he was raised by his mother and grandmother. His entry to music with the world came late, at the age of 29, after a 9-year stint in the Navy. He taught himself to play guitar between shifts at his job making toilet seats for the Boeing Aircraft Company and used his wages to pay for studio stations in L.A. I figured out that you don't need to be a virtuoso to accompany yourself, he told Rolling Stone magazine in 2015. He recorded his first album, Just As I Am, with Booker T. Jones in 1970. It included the mournful ballad Ain't No Sunshine, which earned him his first Grammy Award the subsequent year. He scored another million-selling hit with Lean On Me in 1972. Gospel teen and inspirational, the song was based on his experience growing up in a West Virginia coal mining town. When times were hard, neighbors would lend each other help and assistance, and the memory stuck with the singer. It was later performed at the inaugurations of both Barack Obama and Bill Clinton. But Weathers quit at the top, walking away from his career after scoring a pop hit with Just the Two of Us, although he occasionally toured with Grover Washington Jr. in the 1990s. As a younger man, he suffered with a deliberating stutter, and in 2015, he and fellow stutterer Ed Sheeran put a benefit concert for the Stuttering Association for the Young. The same year, Weathers was inducted into the Rock Hall of Fame, and when asked how it felt by US TV CBS Good Morning, he joked, "It's like a pre-obituary." Despite his influence on generations of musicians, he did not keep track of music after his career ended. These days, he said in 2015, "I wouldn't know a pop chart from a Pop-Tart." But he was aware that his compositions had become part of the fabric of music. "What few songs I wrote during my brief career, there ain't a gene that somebody didn't record them in," he told Rolling Stone in 2014. "I'm not a virtuoso. I hope I'm pronouncing it right, but I'll be chopping up words. But I was able to write songs that people would identify with. The hardest thing in songwriting is to be simple and yet profound," agreed Sting in Still Bill, a documentary about Withers' career. And Bill seemed to understand intrinsically and instinctively how to do that. He's survived by his wife, Marcia, and 2 children, Todd and Corey. And that is it. I don't know, say if I shouldn't read another article. Not right now, but maybe tomorrow or another time and do that again. Okay. Maybe so. But I'm going to go because I was interested to give more information about Nina Simone. So I found an article, and it's going to be the last one I read tonight. Okay. From the NewYorker.com. Okay. Now, it's called American Days, A Raised Voice. How Nina Simone Turned the Movement into Music by Claudia Roth Pierpoint. This was posted on August the 3rd, 2014. My skin is black. The first woman's story begins. My arms are long, and to slow a steady beat, my hair is woolly, my back is strong. Singing in a club in Holland in 1965, Nina Simone introduced a song she had written about what she called four Negro women to a young, homogeneously white and transfixed crowd. And one of the women's hair, she instructed, brushing her hair lightly across her own woolly afro, is like mine. Every performance of four women caught on film as here or this is different. Sometimes Simone coolly chants the first three women's parts. The effect is of re-sound weariness, and at other times, as on this particular night, she gives each woman an individual a sharply dramatized voice. All four have names. Aunt Sarah is old, and her strong back has allowed her only to take the pain inflicted again and again. Several Fia's yellow skin and long hair are the result of her rich white father having raped her mother. Between two worlds I do belong, and sweet thing, a prostitute has tan skin and a smiling bravado that seduces at least some of the eager Dutch listeners into the mistake of smiling too. And then Simone hit them with the last, the most resolutely up-to-date of the women's improbably named peaches. My skin is brown, she growled ferociously. My manner is tough. I'll kill the first mother I see, because my life has been rough. One has to wonder what the Dutch made of that killing of that quote-quote mother. If Simone was just a history of black women in America, it is also a history of long suppressed and finally untamable anger. A lot of black women have been openly angry these days over the new movie about Simone's life, and it hasn't been released. The issue is color and what it meant to Simone to be not only characterically African American, but specifically African in her features and her very dark skin. Is it possible to separate Simone's physical characteristics and what they cost her in this country from the woman she became? Can she be played by an actress with less distinctly African features or a lighter skin tone? Should she be played by such an actress? The casting of Sandia, a movie about a star of Dominican descent and a light-skinned beauty along with European lines, has caused these questions, rarely phased as questions, to dog the production of Nina from the movement. Sandia's casting was announced to complete the film's debut at the Cannes in May at a screening confined to possible distributions. No reviews has seen it. The film's director, Cynthia Moore, has been stalwart in her defense of Sandia's righteousness for the role, citing not only the obvious relevance of the acting skills, but Simone's inclusion of the range of colors from her own four women, which is a fair point. None of the women Simone's most personal and serious song escaped the damage and degradation according to their race. Ironically, Formula was charged with being assaulting to black women and was banned on a couple of radio stations in New York and Philadelphia soon after the recording was released in 1966. The ban was lifted, however, when it produced more outrage than the song. Simone's husband, Andrew Strutter, who was also measured, was worried about the dangers that the controversy might have for her career, although this was hardly a new problem. Simone had been singing out loud and clear about civil rights since 1963. Well, after her heroic stand-up figures like Harry Belafonte and Sammy Davis Jr., but still at a time when many black performers felt trapped between the rules of commercial success and the increasing pressures for racial confrontation. At Motown in the early '60s, the wildly popular performance of a stream of crossover hits became models of black achievement, but had virtually no contact with the movement at all. Simone herself had been hesitant at first. Known for her sophisticated pianism, her impetuous attitude, and her velvety rendition of I Love You, Porgy, which is like Billie Holiday before her. She sang without the meaningfully ungrammatical S on loves. She had arrived in New York late in 1958, establishing her reputation not in Harlem, but in the clubs of hip and relatively interracial Greenwich Village. Her repertoire of jazz and folk and show tunes, often played with a classical touch, made her impossible to classify. In these early years, she performed African songs, but also Hebrew songs, and wove a Bach fugue through a rapid-fire version of Love Me or Leave Me. She tossed off the 30s bauble, My Baby Just Cares for Me, with airy influences and Wrong with a Heart out of Lullaby Brown Baby, newly written by Oscar Brown Jr., about a family hopes for a child born into a better racial order, erupting in a hair-raising wail on the word freedom, as though registering all the pain over the years during which it was denied. For a while, Brown Baby was close to a protest zone as Simone got. She believed it was enough. And then her friend Lorraine Hasbury set her straight. It speaks to Simone's intelligent, restless force that, in her 20s, she attracted some of African Americans' culture's finest minds. Both Langston Hughes and James Baldwin elected themselves mentors. Simone, appearing on the scene just as Holiday died, seemed to evoke most of their exuberant hopes and most protective instincts. But Hasbury offered her a special bond. A young woman also dealing with startling early success, Hasbury was 28 when Raising the Sun won the New York Drama Critics Circle Award in 1959. She had a strong cultivated black pride and a pedagogical bent. We never talked about men or clothes, Simone wrote in her memoir decades later. It was always about Marx, Lenin, and Lemon Revolution, real girls talk. A milestone in Simone's career was a solo concert at Carnegie Hall, a happy chance to show off her pianism, on April 12, 1963, which happened to also be the day that Martin Luther King Jr. was arrested with other protesters in Birmingham, Alabama, and locked up in the local jail. The discrepancy between the events was pointed out by Hansberry, who phoned Simone after the concert, although not to offer praise. 2 months later, Simone played a benefit for the NAACP. In early August, she sang Brown Baby before a crowd gathered in the football stadium of a black college outside Birmingham, the first integrated concert ever given in the area, while guards with guns and dogs prowled the field. But Hansberry only started a process that events in America quickly exhilarated. And I know I'm saying it wrong. Simone watched the march on Washington later that August on television while she was preparing for a club date. She was still rehearsing when on September the 15th, news came of the bombing of Birmingham's 16th Street Baptist Church, killing 4 young African girls who had just got out of Bible class. Simone's first impulsive act, she recalled, was to try to make a zip gun with tools from her garage. I had it in my mind to go out and kill someone, she wrote. Well, damn, okay. I didn't yet know who, but someone I could identify as being in the way of my people. Well, okay. This urge to violence was not a whole aberrant impulse, but something that had been brewing on a national scale. However, tempered by the cooler heads and political pragmatists. At the Washington March, John Lewis, then a leader of the Student Nonviolent Coordination Committee, was forced to cut the word revolution from his speech and to admit to a threat that, absent immediate progress, the marchers would go through the South the way Sherman did and burn Jim Crow to the ground. James Baldwin, in a televised discussion after the bombing, noted that throughout American history, the only time that nonviolence has been admired was when the Negroes practiced it. But the center held. Simone's husband, a smart businessman, told her to forget the gun and put her rage into her music. It took her hours to write Mississippi Goddamn. A freewheeling cry decor based on the place names of oppression. The song had drawing tune that made an ironic contrast with the words "Alabama got me upset, Tennessee made me lose my rest," that arose from injustice so familiar they hardly need to be stated. And everybody knows about Mississippi. Still, Simone spelled it out. She mocked stereotypical insults, too damn lazy. Government process, desegregation, mass participation, and above all, the continuation and motion of public readers on Go Slow, a line that prompted her backup musicians to call out repeatedly as punctuation too slow. It wasn't We Shall Overcome or Blowing in the Wind. Simone had little feeling for the biblically inflected uplift that defined the anthems of the era. It was a song about a movement nearly out of the patience by a woman who never had very much to begin with, and who had little hope for the American future. "Oh, but this whole country is filled with lies," she sang. "You're all going to die and die like flies." She introduced the song to set at the village gate a few days later, and she sang it at a very different concert at Carnegie Hall in March 1964. Bravely feeling "You're all going to die," mostly at the white audience. Along with other protest songs she had taken in hand in writing, including the defining jazz ditty "Old Jim Crow." She also performed a quietly haunted tone called "Images" about a black woman's inability to see her own beauty. She thinks she's brown. She thinks her brown body has no glory. A wistful predecessor to "For Women" that she had composed to words by Harlem Renaissance poet Warren Corning. At the time, Simone herself was still wearing her hair in a harshly straightened 50s style bob. Sometimes the small personal freedoms are harder to speak up for than the larger political ones, and clearly it wasn't time yet for such specifically female injuries to take their place in the racial picture. Mississippi Jingnam was the song of the moment, bold and urgent and easy to sing. It was adopted by embattled protesters in the cursed state itself just months after Simone's concert during what they called the Mississippi Summer Project, or Freedom Summer, or what President Johnson called the summer of our discontent. There was no looking back by the time she performed the song outside Montgomery, Alabama in March 1965, when some of 3,000 marchers were making their way along the 54-mile route from Selma. 2 weeks earlier, protesters making the same attempt had been driven back by state troopers with clubs, whips, and tear gas. The triumphant concert on the fourth night of the march was organized by the Indefatigable Bafante at the request of King, and took place on a makeshift stage built atop stacks of empty coffins lent by local funeral homes, and in front of an audience that had swelled with 25,000 additional people, drawn either by the cause or by a lineup of stars that ranged from Tony Bennett and Johnny Memphis to Joan Baez. Simone, accompanied only by her longtime guitarist Al Chapman, drew cheers on the Napoleon line. "Someone made me lose my rest." In the course of events of that night, she was introduced to King, and Chapman remembered that she stuck out her hand and warned him, "I'm not nonviolent." It was only when King replied gently, "Not to worry, sister," that she calmed down. Simone's explosiveness was well known. In concert, she was quick to call out anyone she noticed talking, to stop and glare or hurl a few insults or even leave the stage. Yet her performance, richly improvised, were also conveniently intimate. She needed the connection with her audience and often riveting. Even in her best years, Simone never put many records on the charts, but people flocked to her shows. In 1966, the critic for the Philadelphia Tribune, an African-American newspaper, explained that to hear Simone sing is to be brought to abrasive contact with the black heart and to feel the power and beauty which for centuries have beat there. She was proclaimed the voice of the movement, not by Martin Luther King, but by Stokely Carmichael and H. Rap Brown, whose Black Power philosophy answered to her own experiences and inclinations. As the 60s progressed, the feelings she displayed, pain, lingering anger, the desire to burn down whole cities in revenge, made her seem at times emotionally disturbed and at other times simply the most honest black woman in America. She recalled that racial anger first arose arose in her when she was 11. Born a Nice woman in 1933, she was six of 8 children of John and Kate Wyman, who were descendants of slaves and pillars of the small black community of Taiwan, North Carolina. Her mother was a Methodist preacher, a severely religious woman who made extra money by cleaning houses for a white Toronto family. Her father, who had started off as an entertainer, worked at whatever the circumstances required. Even during the Depression, the Waymans made a good home. Simone's earliest memories was of her mother singing hymns, and both the house and the church were so filled with music that no one noticed the little instant climbing up onto the organ bench until, at the age of 2.5, she played "God Be with You" till we meet again straight through. Yet I swear, as the little girl's music is the way that in the time and place, those gifts were encouraged. She began playing for her mother's sermons before her feet could reach the pedals, and was soon accompanying the church choir and Sunday services. She was especially enjoyed playing for visiting revivalists because of the raptures she discovered that she could loose in an audience with music. At the other end, I'll just say, why am I up here? Look, okay. At the other end of the spectrum, she was 5 years old when a woman for whom her mother cleaned the house were offered to pay for lessons with a local piano, Morel Monavatrich. The British-born Miss May, as Eunice called her, and also later on my white mama, inspired her love for Bach and her plans to become a great and famous classical pianist. Giving a recital in a local library at 11, Eunice saw her parents being removed from their front row seats to make room for a white couple. She had been schooled by Miss Mizzy in a proper deportment, but she nevertheless stood up and announced that if people wanted to hear her play, they'd better let her parents sit back down in the front row. There were some laughs, but her parents were returned to their seats. The next day, she remembered, she felt as if I had been flayed, and every sight, real or imagined, cut me raw. But the skin grew on my back a little tougher, a little less innocent, and a little more black. Her skin was very black, and she was very fully aware of that, along with the fact that her nose was too large. The aesthetics of race, and the loathing and slut-foaming inflicted on those who vary from accepted standards of beauty, is one of the most pervasive aspects of racism, yet it is not often discussed. The standards have been enforced by blacks as well as by whites. Even Halle Berry wrote in his memoir about his mother well-intentioned counsel to marry a woman with good hair. And he added an unnecessary clarification. Good hair meant straight hair. Reader, he married her. Okay. But Nina Simone, strong and fierce proud, Nina Simone, I can't be white, and I'm the kind of color girl who looks like everything white people despise, or have been taught to despise, she wrote in a note to herself. Not during her adolescence, but in the years when she was already a successful performer. If I were a boy, it wouldn't matter so much. But I'm a girl, and in front of the public all the time, wide open for them to jeer and approve of or disapprove of. Countering the charge of physical inferiority in her youth was the talent that her mother assured her was God-given. Much of her salvation... I'm reading wrong. Music was her salvation, her identity. Thanks to a fund established by a pair of generous white patrons in Taiwan, she went to board at a private high school. She practiced piano 5 hours a day and graduated the valedictorian, and then to a summer program at Juilliard, all with the unwavering aim of getting into the Curious Institute of Music in Philadelphia, where admission was terrifically competitive, but tuition was free. Her destiny seemed so assured that her parents moved to Philadelphia before she took the Curtis exam. The fact that she was rejected and believed that this was because of her race was a source of unending bitterness. It was also a turning point. In the summer of 1954, in need of money, Eunice Woman took a job playing cocktail piano in an Atlantic City dive. The owner demanded that she also sing, and hoping to keep the news of this unholy employment from her mother, turning herself into Nina Simone, feeling every right to the anger that Nina Simone displayed forever after. At times, it seemed that she could outdistance her feelings. In 1961, after a brief marriage to a white hanger-on at the Atlantic City Club, she married Stoward, a tough police detective on the Harlem beat, who she initially signed up as a light-skinned man, well-built and very sure of herself. The following year, she gave birth to a daughter, Lisa Cassette. I got the name. Cassette Cerise. Okay. And Starr left his job to manage Simone's career. They live in a large house in the leafy Westchester suburb of Mount Vernon, complete with a gardener and a maid. Although she complained of working too hard and touring too much, of being desperately exhausted, her life was not of the stuff of the blues. And then, before the concert in early 1967, Strauss found her in her dressing room putting on makeup in her hair. She did not know who he was. She didn't quite know who she was. She later remembered that she had been trying to get her hair to match her skin. I had visions of laser beams in heaven, with skin, always skin, involved in there somewhere. The full medical facts of Simone's mental illness became public only after her death in 2003, thanks to two Vintage Friend Club founders and friends of Simone's, Sylvia Hampton and David Nathan, whose accounts of the singer's career amplified title after one of Simone's songs, Nina Simone Break Down and Let It All Out 2004. Subsequent biographies warmly over-dramatizing Nina Simone by David Burnt Lembeter 2009, and the coolly Malicious Princess Nord by Nadine Coldust 2010 have filled in terrible details of depression and violence and long sought but uncertain diagnosis. Bipolar disorder appears to be the best comforting explanation. Expert Simone's diaries and letters of the 1960s, published by Joe Hagen, who got them from Andrew Stout, in The Believer, in 2010 added that the news that Simone's personal hell was compounded by regular beatings from Storord. The marriage dissolved in 1970, but it was many more years before she received any helpful medication. And the more remarkable then, the strength of Simone projected through the 60s. As the decade wore on, she began to favor bright African gowns and entirely braided African hairstyles. She became the high priestess of soul. And though the title was no more than a record company's PR gambit, Aretha Franklin was crowned the Queen of Soul. She bore with convention. It would be wrong, however, to give the impression that her songs were mostly about civil rights. Stroud, with his eye on the bottom line, was always there to keep her from going too far in that direction. In concert, she even pulled back with Mississippi Gumbo, singing "We All Gonna Die" and "Die Like Flies" in place of the gleeful threatening "You're all gonna die." Although she did record the classical Anti-Legion by Strange Fruit in 1965, and she would give the most unexpected songs of an edge of racial protest, listening to her harrowing version of Bridge Rail Pirate Jenny, she had a vast and often surprising musical appetite. By the late 60s, she was so afraid of falling behind in times that she expanded her repertoire to include Bob Dylan, Leonard Bernstein, and cover all bases, the Bee Gees. One of her biggest hits of the era was a joyfully endorsed Ain't Got No, I Got Life from the musical Hair, which in her hands became a classic freedom song. But Wobbly Strafe was in everything she sang. In the carnivorous depths of her voice, some people think Simone sounds like a man, but in her intensity, her drama, her determination. It's there that in the crazy love song I Put a Spell on You, in which she recasts as the crippled need of love, because you're mine, into an undeniable command. It's there in a 10-minute gospel deed for Sinnerman, which she cries out power, like a southern preacher. And her musicians shout back, power to the Lord. And especially since she takes the disapproving voice of the Lord upon herself. Where were you when you ought to be praying? If you never before thought of the Lord as a black woman, you did now. The civil rights songs were nevertheless what she called the important ones. And the movement is where she gained her strength. It is also where her private anger took out on public dimensions. In the years when the patience gave way entirely, and the anger in many black communities could no longer be tempered down. On stage in Detroit, on August 13, 1967, my sister was about to be born almost then, one of my sisters. 2 weeks after a 5-day riot had left 43 people dead, hundreds injured, and the city in ruins, Simone singing just in time added a message to the crowd. Detroit, you did it. I love you. Detroit, you did it. She was met with roars of approval, which one Detroit critic said he presumed had come from the arsonists, looters, and snipers in the audience. Another critic, however, wrote that her show let white people know what they had to learn, and learn fast. Was she the voice of national tragedy or of the next American Revolution? Anne King was shot on April the 4th, 1968. Section of Washington, Chicago, Baltimore, and more than 100 smaller cities went berserk. Her spark of report, Simone was profoundly shaken in her views of what might be accomplished by this country only grew more bleak. Sorry, let y'all know I got to put the landline phone back on the charger. So, at an outdoor concert in Harlem, the following summer, Isabel YouTube, she went for broke. Mischievously bedecked a La Africaine. She opened with 4 women singing now before a crowd where Afro was the norm. After several other stirrings, politically focused on revolution, black-led blues, she closed with something so new that she had not the time to learn it. A poem by David Nelson, which was then part of a group called The Last Poets, and is now among the revered beginners of rap. She read the words from a sheet of paper, moving across the stage and repeating over to the crowd to answer questions. Are you ready, black people? Are you ready to do what is necessary? The crowd responded to this rather vague injunction with a mere cheer, prompted by the bongos behind her and the man in her voice. And then, are you ready to kill if necessary? Now, I beg her, if someone encourages cheer rolls from the smiling crowd filled with little kids dancing to the rhythm on a Sunday afternoon. It had been 5 years since the Highland Riot of 1964, the granddaddy of 60 riots. New York had largely escaped the run-nations of both 1967 and 1968. Are you ready to smash white things, to burn buildings? Are you ready, she cried? Are you ready to build black things? Despite her best efforts, Simone failed to incite a riot in Harlem that day in 1969. The crowd received the poem as it had received her songs, with noisy affirmation, but merely as a part of a performance. People applauded and went on their way. There are many possible reasons. No brutal incident of the kind that frequently set off riots. Massive weariness, the knowledge of people somewhere else trapped in the riot-devastated cities, maybe even hope. Simone had her unlikeness hit that year with the simple hymn of promise to be young, gifted, and black, based on a title of the play that had been put together from Lorraine's Hansberry uncollected writings. Hansberry, who died in 1965, had used the phrase in a speech to a group of prize-winning black students, and Simone, as a fellow musician, welded and vine to come up with lyrics that will make black children all over the world feel good about themselves forever. Indeed, it is a children's song, or it was until Aretha took it over. Simone's most moving performance may not have been on Sesame Street, where she sat. No, wait a minute, I read that wrong. Simone's most moving performance may have been on Sesame Street, where she sat on the set's 10 steps, wearing an African gown and lip sync her corner to four enchanting, if slightly mystified, black children who raised their arms in victory towards the end. It was not a victory she could believe in, or a mood she it was a victory that she could believe in. It was not a victory she could believe in, or a mood she could sustain. By the 1960s, both Simone's career and her marriage were in serious trouble. The pop rock did not really suit her, and the jazz and folk markets had radically shrunk. The concert stage still showed her income and her stature. And if the collapse of her marriage was in some ways a liberation, she was also now without a person who had managed her finances and her schedule, and who had kept her calm before she went on stage by forbidding her alcohol, among other needs, and got her off stage quickly when the calm failed. She was left to govern herself in a world that suddenly had no rules and, just as frightening, was empty of her larger steadying purpose. And he had gone, and the movement had walked out on me too, she wrote, leaving me like a seduced schoolgirl lost. Looking back on those historic protests and legislative victories of the 60s, one may find it easy to assume a course of inevitable, if not halting, racial progress. Yet this was anything but apparent as the decade closed. When in 1970 James Baldwin set out to write about the life and death of what we call civil rights movement, it's failure to see him behind contention. As for the black leaders who have walked out on Simone, quote, quote, they were in cemeteries. Malcolm X, Medgar Evers, King, Fred Hampton, in jail, Huey Ewing, Bobby Seale, or in Africa, Stokely Carmichael, or else had, quote, quote, run for cover, as she put it, in community or academic programmings. White liberals had diverted their efforts to be a mob. This was now the war being fought on televisions and living rooms every night. According to Simone, the days when revolution really had seemed possible were gone forever. She left the country in 1974, traveled to Libya with her 12-year-old daughter. She stayed for 2 years, during which she performed hardly at all. She then left Libya for Switzerland in order to put her daughter in school there. Eventually, she moved to France alone. It seemed to have been the only recurrent need for money that spurred her to perform again in the United States, although she took great pride in the honorary doctorate that she received from Amherst in 1977, and insisted ever on being called Dr. Nina Simone. Meanwhile, her concerts tended increasingly towards disaster, as she now sang in Mississippi Damn, the whole damn world made me lose my rest. The remainder of her life, some 25 years, is a tale of escalating misery. At the worst, she was found wandering naked in a hotel car, brandishing a knife. She set her house on fire. She set her house in France on fire. And once, also in France, she shot a teenage boy in the leg, but that may have been a poor aim, in a neighbor's backyard for making too much noise. I heard on Wikipedia it was like some type of, I forgot what type of bullet it was, but it wasn't like where it was a bullet gun or whatever. Let me make sure